Hell has arrived, and you're ready for a divine intervention, with lots and lots of bullets. Hellclock sounds like the name of a metal band, or maybe a Path of Exile league. And yeah, if you don't pay too much attention, it might look like a time attack roguelike, but at its core, it's an ARPG, or you might even say an Exile-like, where you put together a build and then blast through hordes of enemies in hopes of collecting shiny loot that you take into your next run. And after all, you could say a seasonal ARPG is just a roguelike where each run takes about 3 months. Hey, if you play hardcore, those runs get a lot faster. Now, the demo for Hellclock covers 14 floors in Act 1, but even in this limited slice of gameplay, you have plenty of opportunities to create a unique feeling build and absolutely obliterate your foes. For example, you could become a walking bladestorm and mow down anything standing in your way, or drop bells to summon an army, or if none of that's your style, just go full auto, causing any enemies you kill to explode, and much, much more. So, it's time to talk about Hellclock. Now, the setting here is pretty unusual. It takes place after the War of the Canudos in 1896, and I apologize if I've mispronounced that. But there is a bit of a supernatural twist, as I don't remember reading about the forces of hell in any of my history books. This, combined with the game's bold art and dark gritty tone, really helped the setting stand out to me. For your first couple runs, the gameplay starts off pretty punishing. The hell clock is always ticking, and if you run out of time, your run comes to an end. This encourages you to play really recklessly, which can lead to an early death. Now for the demo, your goal is to make it to the end of 14 floors and kill 2 bosses along with numerous enemies as you go. But if you continue to explore and get gear upgrades, many of which raise your baseline stats, like a better gun will boost your damage, some nice boots will help you walk about 5.25% faster, and maybe even get some relics that let you customize your build or add crazy effects to your skills, well, all of a sudden those runs are going to get a lot faster. And since builds are the focal point here, let's get into them a little bit. Because the first build that made me really start paying attention to this game was a Bell Summoner. Found a pretty cool skill that I could use to drop bells on enemies. Alright, cool enough, but it costs a lot of mana. So then I equipped a relic to make them scale off of my maximum mana, because if the mana cost is high, well, I might as well stack a bunch of it. And now that I'm stacking mana so I could do more damage, well, what's the fun in doing all this alone? So then I added a second relic that summoned a soldier every time I dropped a bell. Last up, I added a relic that gave me some mana back every time I fired off a knife, and so before I knew it, I'd be able to put up my knives and start dropping bells to create a light show for my own personal army. But the real test of, is this game an ARPG, is of course, can you play spin to win? And luckily, yes, there's a skill for that. With a couple of relics, you can not only remove the move speed penalty, which makes it much faster and much easier to become a walking blender, but after that you can convert the damage to lightning and scale it off of your movement speed, and maybe add an additional relic for some life leech, so the end result is a build that is fast, super tanky, very fun, and maybe OP enough that it won't make it into the release version of the game. I mean, a guy can hope, but yeah, this probably isn't going to last. And so now that I've talked about just how crazy the builds can get in Hellclock, let's get into all the progression systems that enable them. So when you level up, you get a blessing. You will not be able to take these blessings with you into your next run, but you do carry them between floors. Now, blessings have different rarities. In this case, the Frenzied Dance blessing gives 12% skill speed, and it is magic, that's why it's blue. The Extended Warp gives Area of Effect, and it's rare. The Expanding Retribution also gives Area of Effect. It's epic. The Heightened Senses, which gives Area of Effect to a different skill, magic. The reason these rarities are important is because your skills have a blessing capacity. So you can only have 1 epic, 2 rare, 3 magic, and 4 regular blessings on each skill. Meaning if I was to take Expanding Retribution here for my closed body, I would not be able to take a different epic blessing later. This means it is often advantageous to pass on a higher rarity blessing if it's not the effect you want for the skill. So if I don't need Area of Effect on my slow time, I wouldn't want to take that. Or maybe I'd just take Frenzied Dance, because this, of course, Double Knives is my main skill currently, so I'd rather just enhance that up. Now, as you kill enemies, you get trinkets, and you'll see several just got pulled into my inventory. But I don't have all of them here. And that's because you only use the highest rarity trinket. This is another form of progression within a run that doesn't get carried over between runs. So here this Trinket of Power is a rare tier 1, giving plus 13% damage. If I found a lower rarity Trinket of Power, it wouldn't be equipped because I already have the rare version. Meanwhile, I have a magic Trinket of Faith giving me 13% mana. So if I found a rare Trinket of Faith, that would replace the magic. Or a magic Trinket of Health would replace the common that I have. Let's see if any of these enemies give me a new trinket. Unlucky. Just another Trinket of Power, and that's a duplicate that I have at a lower rarity, so not an upgrade. But right there, I got Trinket of Intensity. So now I have increased critical hit damage. This was a new trinket, therefore, I'm now using it. Now, if you activate one of these statues, you get a Blessing of Foundation. Unlike the normal blessings you gain from leveling up, this is not specific to a skill. Blessings of Foundation affect all of your skills. So if I take Blessing of Force, it's going to affect both my double knives, which I'm converting over to lightning damage, and also, if I say converted reflexes to lightning damage as well, that'd be elemental, so it would apply to both. Or if I don't convert them, well, they're both phys skills, so by default, this would do nothing. Right now, I'm going to take movement speed because it's really fun to go fast. Something else that's important about the Blessing of Foundation, unlike the other blessings, it has a price. It costs gold, and the gold cost is higher based on the rarity of the blessing. So if you get a really high rarity blessing early on, instead of it being an exciting moment, you're just not going to be able to buy it. You need to kill enemies to get trinkets, you also need to kill enemies to get EXP and gold. You can then use that gold to reroll the blessings that are offered to you when you level up, or to purchase the foundational blessings, making your character and thus all of your skills stronger. And this is a perfect example. I cannot afford the Blessing of Alacrity 3 because I only have 1,400 gold. So instead I'll have to buy something like Blessing of Force, Blessing of Spirit, or reroll. Now, in addition to blessings and trinkets, one of your more powerful progression systems is the meta progression system of relics. You'll first interact with these through the Blessing of Legacy gained when you kill a boss. These relics are very powerful. And let's take a look at some examples here. So I've got a Hemorrhagic Grand Relic of Mobility. Critical hits with melee skills, like my twin blades, recover 1.25% of life. This makes me very tanky. In addition, I've got some movement speed, crit hit damage multi, and of course, fire and lightning res. But I'm nowhere near res cap, don't tell anyone. Then in addition to this, I have a whole bunch of unique relics. You equip these for their unique effect. So in this case, each knife hit on reflexes increases movement speed and attack speed by 10% for 2.25 seconds, up to a total of 50%. This makes the build feel very fast and very responsive, as I can just hit reflexes, summon all the knives, and then as they fire out, I gain passive buffs and kill enemies. I'm using Martyr so that when I use Closed Body after I've taken a bunch of damage, I gain a big old shield. This isn't super important to my build, I just happen to throw it on because it's kind of cool. Then the Bloody Thorn says that Double Knives has a 33% chance to apply bleeding on critical hit. I'm going to be hitting quite a lot, so a lot of things are going to be bleeding. The Scout's Medal, really important. Double Knives doesn't slow you down while you're using it. The Tempest, Double Knives' damage is increased by 19% of your movement speed, so you gotta go fast. Going fast equals doing more damage. It's converted to lightning. This is why I was taking the elemental damage blessings earlier. And critical hits trigger an electric wave that deals 20% of the damage to nearby enemies. Those were the lightning strikes that you were seeing almost constantly as I was hitting large packs. And all of this is combined with Banner of Faith, where 1.25% of the damage is converted to life, again, making the character very, very tanky. Though I probably don't need the Banner of Faith and the Martyr. Honestly, I'm probably just overkilling it even with Hemorrhagic Grand Relic. But hey, face-taking enemies and not worrying about your health is fun. Normally in a roguelike, you have to really worry about health. It's a resource, but this build very much does not do that. Watch out for those red portals. They skip you ahead in the dungeon. The downside of that, you lose out on some loot. The upside of that, you get to complete it much faster, and the Hellclock is less of an issue. So, back in base between runs, there's a couple things you can do. First up, you can go to the Blessed Corner to buy gear upgrades. These take the form of equipment, blessed items that you carry between runs. So the cap increases physical resistance, jacket increases life, rosary increases mana. All of these are meta progression upgrades that you take with you run after run after run. So after you get a really good worn revolver, for example, your damage is going to be way better than before. And this ring, 5.5% crit chance. Well, I could buy another one, but that would cost me 400 soul stones, and it isn't actually better. 5.5 to 5.5. I could also buy a unique relic. If you want to swap your relics, you go here. For example, I just got this Savage Grand Relic of Spirit, where double knives deals more damage but costs more mana. That sounds like a perfectly fair trade-off, so I'm going to equip it, and now my build's even better. It's not like double knives costs all that much anyway, so it should be very easy to sustain the costs. Last, but certainly not least, you have the Great Bell. And if you're wondering where is Path of Exile's skill tree in this Exile-like, it's in the Great Bell. This is where you can fill out nodes and unlock a bunch of effects. In general, the bottom of a tree has more powerful effects. Also, some of these branches I have not yet explored, because this requires Act 2, not in the demo, Act 3, not in the demo, Act 3, not in the demo. So instead I've mostly just been taking the big nodes here. This is like Hellclock, this is the red portal mechanic allowing you to skip the levels, and of course relic stuff, because the more relic stuff that you can take, the better. Oh, and you can also upgrade your skill's maximum level. This is something that unlocks through the Great Bell. Swap skills, just come over here, open your skill book, you can unlock new skills. You can also equip different skills, level them up, have a grand old time, and try to make your own ultimate build. Unfortunately, I did run into a couple bugs. For one, if I did a lot of damage to bosses, some of them just seemed to kind of freeze. I think this was a stun interaction, but it doesn't feel intended because the boss fight just kind of doesn't happen. The boss sits there and lets you wail on it until it eventually dies. There's also one run where my minion army did not spawn from the bells, and that made me sad, but I also can't reproduce it, so I don't really know what was going on there. I guess the only feedback I can give there is if there's a platoon of ghost soldiers out there somewhere, just let me know where they are and I'll come get them. And so, will Path of Exile 326 be Hellclock League? Probably not, but Hellclock is coming later this year, and so far has been pretty awesome. In my first few runs, I found the timer to be really oppressive. And it would probably be even worse if I was trying to get to floor 21, as every 7 floors, enemies get significantly tankier, and the timer really adds up when you play safe. But if you play recklessly, you're not strong enough and you're probably going to die. As a note, if you really hate the timer, you can turn it off in a menu, but I don't recommend doing this just because it feels uncomfortable for your first couple runs, because this is an ARPG. And once you get back into things with a little bit of gear, you can breeze through enemies like they're barely an obstacle. And it was really fun to combine the relics and destroy everything while speeding through the levels in a few minutes. At first, the Hellclock was oppressive, but after that, I swear it only takes me like 2 minutes to clear the first 14 floors. Yes, sometimes this is using portals. Red portals skip you a couple floors ahead. This is both good and bad. Good in terms of it saves you time and it gets you to the end faster. Bad in terms of you're losing out on all the EXP and gold that you would have gained, i.e. the character power, from killing enemies along the way. But if your build is strong enough, this doesn't really matter. And so yes, the game called itself an Exile-like, and it definitely captures the feeling of blasting. So I'm definitely going to be checking Hellclock out in the future. If you want to see more of my thoughts, be sure to get subscribed, maybe leave a like while you're down there. With that said, there are a couple things that I'm looking forward to in the full release. First of which is more builds. Because right now, there's only a fraction of the skills in the game. It looks like there's 3 acts, and each act adds a few more skills. There's only a fraction of the relics, and your power level is limited. You only have 14 floors out of the 21 that you're eventually going to have. This means not only do you get much stronger, you have more opportunities to fish for high-powered skills. You'll probably have to be a little bit more careful about taking bad skills. Right now, you don't really want to take a bad, rare, or epic skill, but most of the other slots aren't going to get filled up anyway, unless, of course, you vastly limit how many skills you have. But later on, I suspect it's going to get to a point where you are going to fill up all of your skill slots, so everything matters, and you don't want to just take something that's dead. At least if you can avoid it. Sometimes you won't have the gold to reroll, and rerolls do get quite expensive, so you're probably going to have to settle, and that's just the nature of roguelikes. Yeah, in short, I'm excited for more builds. Though I do also have a little bit of a concern. Because this game leans so heavily into the ARPG side of things, you're taking a lot of the same build from run to run, which I suspect is going to make them feel a bit more repetitive. Now, if you're bored and want to change things up, there should be plenty of options to try something new. However, when I was putting a build together, I noticed that it was most effective to have one main damaging skill and then go full utility for all the rest, basically using all of my other skills to buff that one up to super absurd levels, or maybe having a clear skill and a single target skill and then everything else to be utility/movement. And if that's the case, I do think it's going to make builds feel a little bit samey, especially if there are a few clear winners when it comes to utility skills, where you're always taking, let's just say, the same 3 core skills and only swapping 1 or 2 between builds. And also, I could see the runs getting a bit more repetitive a lot sooner than with other roguelike games, because it does feel a lot more similar if you're playing the main skill over and over again, because that's the best, and of course players will optimize the fun out of everything. But again, I'm optimistic and I'm looking forward to the release of the game. And so that's it. I'm curious, what do you think of Hellclock? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. And if you're looking for something else to watch, maybe check out my thoughts on some of the other games I've played recently. I tried Clair Obscur Expedition 33, absolutely excellent, super excited to play that one. I tried Conquest Dark, a bullet heaven game, that one was pretty fun. I played a fair bit of Monster Hunter Wilds, not really my thing, but it was fine. And I also tried Dragon Kingdom of Banished, and that one I definitely don't recommend. But if you want to see more, all of those videos will be up in the card and down below. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.